back to Japan. So I told you that Japan wants to have a huge empire, but they can't have this huge empire because they don't have the resources. So they invade China, which is a direct violation of the League of Nations. And the League of Nations does nothing because they don't have any power to do anything, pretty much. And so the United States places an embargo over the Japanese because of what they were doing. And so when we place this embargo on Japan, we start talking like get rid of the embargo, or you need to do this, So we start negotiating what they needed to do in order to get the embargo lifted. And we were still in negotiations with them. We actually had a meeting with them that morning or that night. And like while we were like meeting with them and doing these faith negotiations on December 7th, 1941, Japan and their naval forces attacked Pearl Harbor, the United States' biggest Navy base in the Pacific, and they destroy a lot of our capacity to wage war, and that was their purpose. Luckily for us, we knew that there was probably going to be an attack that would be imminent. We just did not know where. And so a lot of our a few of our destroyers, a few of our aircraft carriers were actually out in the Pacific. They were not all there at Pearl Harbor on December 7th. If they had all been there, then I don't know if America would have defeated Japan. But some of them were out to sea, and so our entire Pacific fleet was not destroyed. And it has been said that one of the leaders of Japan's Navy said that they had awakened a sleeping giant, and he was correct. The United States became, after the date that will live in infamy, which is what President Roosevelt said when he asked Congress to declare war on Japan on December 8th, America became an arsenal of democracy. And by arsenal of democracy, I literally mean America started to make tanks, planes, all these things. Like yesterday, if you've been following the news, the president of the United States, President Trump, yesterday, I think it was yesterday, he announced that he was invoking the War Powers Act. This is what he was talking about. This act was actually invoked by President Roosevelt during World War II, which literally said, if you were GM or Ford, you were now making tanks. You are not making cars anymore. You are making tanks for this war effort. We literally started producing warships at like one a day, just bang, 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 bang. They were going out of Mobile, Alabama, California. They were going like they were prefabricating these things at places maybe in Michigan. And they would send these parts down to ports in Mobile Bay in California, and they would just put these ships together at rapid rates. And we literally did this for countries. We were the arsenal of democracy. We're making tanks, we're making planes, we're making ships at astronomical rates. And the sleeping giant had been awoken, and that sleeping giant was the United States and its manpower. And a lot of this manpower was actually provided by minorities and women. That's where we get the Rosie the Riveter. That picture of Rosie the Riveter into our consciousness is because women, just like in other wars, women went out and they worked. Where men were at war, the women went and worked. And they became a huge part of the workforce and a huge part of the reason that the United States wins this war effort. And you have different like political cartoons and different propaganda posters that come out, and they ask for people to go to work. And as I said, minorities also were a part of this. As you can see, I don't know if you can see it very well, and I know but it was another great migration for African Americans, just like during World War I, when so many of them moved to the north, many of them will move to other places to look for work in the new wartime industries. These wartime industries, however, were very racist, and for African Americans and other minorities, Jews, and they would not allow them to work making the planes, making this. They were custodians. That's all they were allowed to do. So A. Philip Randolph, who was a black leader during the 1940s, he had been a union leader for blacks for years before this. He actually tells President, if you do not tell that these people who are getting these contracts from the federal government to make these planes and tanks, if you do not tell them that they also have to hire minorities, then I am going to call a march on Washington. And thousands of African Americans and other people who are being denied access to good paying jobs, we're going to come on Washington and we are going to march. While you're saying you're fighting for democracy and you're not allowing people in our own country to have the full rights of democracy, we're going to show the rest of the world what's going on here. And we're going to march on Washington and you're going to look bad. And the president knew he was going to look bad. So he actually signs an executive order that says that if any job, like any organization, like say GM, if any job is getting money from the federal government, then they must employ minorities and allow minorities to have these jobs as well. They just can't say only white women or white men will get these jobs. Minorities have to get them as well. So that was one minority. So you have women. They worked hard. They went to the workforce to help those Rosa Derivators. You have African Americans who wanted to work but couldn't. And so an executive order had to be passed so that they would not be discriminated against in federal government jobs. And then you have the Japanese. So Japanese Americans after Pearl Harbor, a lot of people thought that they were spies. Oh my God. They're spying on us. And so the president issues another executive order. This executive order was Executive Order 9066, excuse me. And this executive order said that the government could round up Japanese American citizens. These were Japanese Americans. These were people who had lived in America for maybe decades. They could be rounded up, and they could be sent to internment camps. So all the Japanese people in Hawaii on the West Coast, they could be sent to internment camps. And one of the guys who were actually sent to internment camps, and he's actually talked about it, if you've ever watched Star Trek, Live Long and Prosper, the first version of Star Trek, the original, Sulu, he actually was... he and his family were sent to internment camps, and he actually has talked extensively about his about how it was and how life was being considered an enemy in your own country.